Cool. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight or this afternoon, depending on your time zone. I'm Melanie. I'm with the PlayVS community team. I help host these. We have two excellent coaches here tonight, so I'm only going to be on for a moment, and then they're going to take it over. So today we're joined by Mitch Telesfor and Cameron Douglas. Mitch teaches earth science and environmental science at Mesa. Did I pronounce that right? Mesa?
Yes. Yeah.
Charter High School in Brooklyn, New York. He vividly remembers going to Costco in 1999 and buying Mario Kart and a Nintendo 64. Ever since then, he has been an avid gamer, and esports coaching was a logical next step. His passion in the world of esports is in developing the talents of new players and uplifting the voices and profiles of gamers of color. Thank you for joining us, Mitch. We also have Cameron. He's also known as President Douglas, aka MCHS math teacher. He runs an esports program at McDonald County High School in Anderson, Missouri, which is in the southwest corner of the state of Missouri near Oklahoma and Arkansas borders. I'm here for that. I'm from Northwest Arkansas. Yep. Been to Missouri many, many times. Silver Dollar City, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, focus. They're a large rural county school made of over 1,000 students at their high school, and they began their esports program 4 years ago with just 9 members playing only one game, League of Legends. Since then, they've grown their esports program, and at most, the recent meeting, they had over 50 members, and they plan to compete with 9 teams playing in 4 games, including League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Thanks for joining us, Cameron. All right. And then just to give you some logistics, we are recording this, and we will put it on YouTube, and I will email it out along with the slides so that you have all links. You can put any questions that you have in the Q&A, or you may upvote them, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. All right, I am going to hand it over to them and hop off. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everyone. So I'm Mitch, just like Melanie said. This is Cameron, and we are going to be talking through League of Legends. We're going to start by just kind of explaining how we run our practices. And then, just like Melanie said, we're going to end with Q&A. So as far as today's agenda goes, we've got the welcome and intro. We just did that. Then we're going to give an overview of the game for those that have never played before or are new. And then we're going to talk about forming teams. Then we're going to talk about practice. Going to get into some resources, and then finally the Q&A and networking opportunity. So we'll start with the overview.
So things you should know about League of Legends. First of all, it's a MOBA game, massive online battle arena, which means that you're pitting one team against another team. In this case, each team is made up of 5 players, and the goal of the game is to destroy the opponent's nexus. Think of it similar to capture the flag. There are smaller goals along the way that you want to accomplish, but the end goal is always to destroy the enemy's base. It competes every Tuesday at, for us, 4 p.m. Central Time. And, let's see. Go ahead, Mitch.
As far as equipment, the absolute minimum to play the game is a computer, monitor, and peripherals. You don't necessarily need a headset and mic, although we highly, highly recommend it. A keyboard and a mouse. You need an account in the game, and then when you register with PlayVS System, you get what's called League Unlocked, which allows you to have all of the characters in game, which is very, very valuable for competitive play.
So some game overview things. We'll be using quite a bit of terminology. If you guys are not familiar with something or would like to know further information about what we're going to be talking about, please call it out. We're not perfect. I don't know about Mitch. I've been playing this game since season 1. And so if I use a term that you don't recognize or something else, please, please, please say so. And we'll be happy to go through it as well. First thing to note is the map. We'll actually showcase a couple different versions of the map. It appears in the bottom right-hand side of your screen anytime you're playing the game, unless you set it up differently. The map is where you indicate information to your teammates, as well as find information about the enemy lanes, is what they're going on. Speaking of which, Lanes. There are primarily 5 different parts of the game, depending on how you play the game. The current meta, or most effective tactic to win, is to have a single person playing in the top lane. Ooh, yeah. A secondary person playing in mid lane. 2 people playing in the bottom lane, referred to as the bot and support. And then you have your jungler, whose job is to kill things in between them. Throughout the game, there are different parts of the map that you have access to at all times. Your own base, which is appearing in either the bottom side, referred to as blue side, because it's blue. And then you have red side, because it is red. Now, in order to earn gold, which is the in-game currency, you cannot purchase in-game currency with actual money. You have to earn it through completing objectives on the map, killing enemy minions, monsters that appear throughout the jungle, as well as completing various objectives around the map, such as destroying towers and inhibitors. With that information, you gain gold. With gold, you gain items. With items, you do your job on the team better and secure your team's victory by following the objectives.
So just like we said, there's 5 positions in the game: top lane, jungle, mid lane, support, and ADC, also known as bot. Depending on which position you're playing, you might take different types of characters. Top lane is typically sort of heavier champions, tanks, or bruisers as they're called, which is kind of like a mash between a tank and a damage dealer. Jungle is probably the most varied position in terms of types of characters, but one of the more unique characters that goes to this role is assassins. Mid lane also has assassins, but they also have mages. Support is also pretty varied. It can be mages, it can be enchanters, which sort of help their teammates a little bit more than a typical mage, or it can be a tank. And then ADC is, it stands for attack damage carry. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be someone that uses just basic attacks and uses them very rapidly, and deals the most damage over time, that with some exceptions to that rule. As far as items, you could purchase them in the in-game shop, and you get gold for, just like Cameron was saying, you get gold for killing minions or objectives or enemies, and those allow you to buy better and better items. Summoner spells are keyed to your D and F keys. The most typical one is Flash, but there's other ones which allows you to teleport a very short distance. There's other ones such as Teleport, which bring you to an ally from anywhere on the map. You also have Exhaust, which slows and weakens enemies, and various other abilities. Runes are sort of like a passive skill tree that each champion takes to sort of buff themselves, and is sort of like a baseline abilities to start the game. And then wards, which give you vision of the map. The map is dark. We call it the fog of war. And the map is dark all over except for what your character can see directly around them, or the wards, which you place down.
So in a typical game, you have a few phases that will be done. Some are done before the game actually begins. Some are done during the game. And then, of course, there's conversations afterwards as a coach that you should make sure to have. So the first thing is picks and bans. This is the only part of the game that you as a coach should be actively involved in. I have my students in the coaching process. We actually talk picks and bans. We actually did that 2 hours ago. And we went through and talked about what the enemy team is going to be playing, because there's all kinds of stats available about how players play the game, either through the game itself or other third-party websites such as op.gg, which we can send and give information for later. Picks and bans allow you to ban champions you do not want your opponent to be playing. So if you have something that you are not truly comfortable playing against, like if you have somebody that you know you're weak against, or you know your opponent is particularly good at something, then you can ban that champion. You have up to 3 bans in the first ban phase, banned 1 at a time. And then in the second ban phase, you can ban 2 additional champions. Secondary part of that is the pick phase, which goes hand in hand between the two. The pick phase allows you to pick your team's champions and see what the opposing people have picked as well. So you can thus start to build what's referred to as a comp, or a composition of how you want to play your game. The best teams are able to pick a team comp that both looks good to what they want to do in terms of the gameplay, and also hopefully goes against what the opposing team wants to do. Because as you can imagine, with so much variety in champions, items, runes, summoner icons, so many things, having the ability to see some of that information before you physically get into the game can help decide what you want to do, because things like runes can be picked before you begin and you're not allowed to change them in game, whereas items and champions are done in game, and once they're picked, you have to do them separately. Once the game actually formally begins and you load into the game itself, you have what's referred to as laning phase. This is usually between the first 10 and 15 minutes of the game, depending on the team's skill levels. If you're evenly matched, it could go longer. If you're less evenly matched, it could go much shorter. Laning phase is typically where each person stays in their assigned area, with very few exceptions. Occasionally, supports will leave their lane, leave their AD carry off to defend for themselves and go help other people if they feel the need is necessary. And the jungler attempts to make plays around the map, both by killing objectives and moving around and attacking the opponents. After the laning phase, we tend to go to the mid or late game objective phase. All of these things are, by the way, very, very fluid. The game is meant to be played as open concept as you want to. You can take things like is listed here, dragons, herald, baron. You can take things that are not listed here, like towers and inhibitors. You could take them quite early in some cases, and it really does affect how the game is played. And so the main objective after laning phase is to coordinate your team around these larger objectives, either to take them yourself or prevent the enemy from taking them. But always keep in mind for your team that the larger goal is going to be to destroy the enemy's nexus, to destroy their base. And so doing whatever it takes to make that happen is your best move going forward. Speaking of the meta, a big part about the team communication that is worked on outside of the game, at least with my team, is these two big categories, communication and vision. We focus our team primarily upon learning how to talk to each other. As many of you guys have similar students, I'm sure some of them have great team coordination. They've been playing with other players for years or have played with other sports. Others, not so much. They tend to be a lot more selfish players. They've played in solo queue, as it's called, and therefore maybe don't have good team communication. They're used to playing by themselves. And so we work with our teams to both get rid of old bad habits and allow newer good habits of communication to merge together. And then combined with that is vision. As Mitch mentioned, vision is very big in the game because you cannot see what's going on the map unless you have something that gives you vision on the map. When the game starts, you cannot see the opposing team. You can see nothing about them, where they are going, where they are at, unless you have vision of them. Vision is given by the characters themselves. Certain items give vision as well, namely the trinkets and wards. And then also by any structures that are still standing. So if you have towers that are still standing, they give vision. Inhibitors give vision. Any structures that you have down with vision. And so we focus our teams primarily upon these main game phases and how to work together to accomplish our main goal.
So some vocabulary that we've kind of talked about a little bit. We have Summoner's Rift. That's the official name of the map. Very few people call it that in game, but that is the official name of it. The turrets, those are structures that are on both teams, and they damage enemy players, and they also damage enemy minions, which are constantly coming out of either base. The fountain is your home base. It's where you start the game, and every time you go back or on your own, or every time that you die, that's where you start. That's where you begin. And if you go there, you regenerate health and mana very quickly. Speaking of which, mana is energy that you use to fuel abilities. It's typically below the champion's health bar. There are a handful of champions that don't use mana. They use other things such as energy or fury or grit in one champion's case. But typically it's like your ability to use abilities. I can close this one out, Cameron, if you want. I can just run through the vocab.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Cool. So a cooldown is essentially a timer, and it represents how long you have between start of ability or casting an ability and then having it again. Camps, they are throughout the jungle, and they are basically just different jungle monsters the jungler typically takes. And there are 4 of them on the map that also, upon killing, you get a passive buff that lasts for a certain amount of time. And then a power spike. This is a common term that more advanced players start to become more aware of, and it's a point at which a champion is at their strongest, or when they sort of like come over and hit a plateau. Um, Scaling is the process of getting towards that power spike, and some enemies are typically very powerful early, some are powerful mid, and some are powerful late, depending on the time that you're at in game.
Bouncing off of that, I also want to mention that we mentioned early, mid, and late. These are relative terms depending on the game. I've had games in my personal experience that have gone less than 15 minutes, where you either just really badly hurt the opposing team or you get curb stomped yourself. It's a good time. I've also had games that lasted more than an hour. And so ideas like mid and early and late can be dependent upon your characters and the champions you're playing and how you play the game itself. So things you need to familiarize yourself with if you're going to be a coach. So first of all, I strongly recommend to my players, and I do it myself, you need time in the game. The physical amount of time you have played tends to match how much time or how good you are in the game, unless you have some kind of rare raw skill. Putting in the hours really does make you a better player. You learn things like when the jungle camps spawn, when your abilities will be up, which items to buy, all by playing the game more. You can play by yourself, you can play offline using things like practice tools, and you can also do matchmaking against other players. I encourage, and actually we have a viewing party every year for some of the pro leagues. Watching the LCS is referred to, the League Championship Series here in America. There are other leagues across the country that you can also watch. In fact, Worlds is coming up here starting next weekend, and my team will be having a watch party for it, where we will watch how they play the game, because you can learn from what the pros do and also see sort of what the skill cap is for what some of these people can do and how some of these characters can be played. So you can start to compare and say, oh, this person was able to win this fight very easily in under 3 minutes. I should, work to get that same thing. And there are also numerous popular League of Legends YouTubers, League of Legends channels. I referenced one at the very end that my team uses quite a bit. And I would be hesitant to recommend any. You'll find that, as with all gamers, sometimes they have some less than great quality content that maybe some of the high school parents may be great and okay with, and some may be a little more concerned about. But there are some amazing and wonderful high quality YouTubers and people who put content out there. And if you find any, feel free to share with any other players and any other coaches, because they're always worth having.
So some important stuff about like match day protocol. The substitution window. So 15 minutes prior to match starts and between games, you have to update the play versus roster. Excuse me. To make sure that your players that are playing in the current match are on the roster on the website. If you don't, then those kids won't be able to get the code, and it won't properly save their stats to the website. You have 30 minutes to join the lobby, so match time is at 4 typically. You have until 4:30 to start. In my experience, we often find that we're using all 30 of those minutes for some type of tech error. So I would highly recommend that you not give players the okay to say like, for example, I had one student who would always want to run to the deli on the corner right at 4, and that is always a no-go because if he's getting there at 4:25 and then we have tech problems, then the match isn't going to happen. Coaches communicate prior to match via Discord, email, and phone. This is super, super important. Typically for me, I prefer to send the coaches an email and then day of I call on the phone, just because Discord is blocked at my school. However, I know a lot of coaches use the Discord. I love the coach Discord. I think it's phenomenal. And it's a great way to connect with other people. Match creation. So in the mission control on the website, there's a button that will pop up at 4 that says copy game 1 code. You click it and it copies the code to your clipboard, and then you can paste it directly into the game as a tournament code. If you open the game, there's an
I have a
area
picture where I can show where that
Oh,
is.
perfect. Awesome. Did you want to share that right now, or is that in a later?
It's farther
That's
down.
in the next slide, right? Yeah. Okay. Each player will open League of Legends client. Make sure players log into the game client with the account that matches the summoner name they put in their Play versus profile. Click play and then select the trophy button in the top right corner. We'll show you on the next slide. And then enter the tournament code and join the lobby in order. My recommendation for this is you, as the coach, join the lobby first and then just invite your kids one at a time based on position. I found that in the past that trying to do this and having the kids do it themselves can often be a little wild. They end up in the wrong position, and then it takes forever to get the game started. So what I do is I say, don't even look at the website. I will get the code. I will invite you all. And then you just put yourself as a spectator. And then we've got the image coming up in just a bit.
Okay, some fundamental skills that can be worked on by any player, no matter what skill level they are at. First thing, mechanics. You'll hear this term coined quite a bit in any esport. This is what your player can individually do. Some common terminology that you might hear that you can YouTube the different terms: animation canceling, kiting, ability interaction, summoner spells. These are all part of your player's mechanics. Different characters that your person plays have different mechanics that are good to know, and interactions that are useful to know whenever they are being used in the game. Certain characters work very well with certain abilities and items, and some just don't. And so that's part of your mechanics. Your build, these are items that you will purchase while you're in the game. These can be preset for many of my new players. I tell them build what's recommended because the game's client has greatly improved over the years, and they have actually some fantastic recommendations in the current game state. But as your players get more experienced, they will typically want to customize them specifically for what they are wanting to do in the game. Also, some fundamental skills that my players work on constantly is ganking and rotations. Working with the jungler and supports early on, they are the most mobile people on the early part of the game, and these can create opportunities for your team to have success by creating numbers advantages. If you're in top lane, for example, fighting against the opposing top laner, and your jungler comes up to attack them as well, suddenly you have 2 people against 1. Usually that's a good way to get a kill, to trade pressures. This is part of ganking as a jungler's role. Similarly, you can have mid laners that leave their lane to go to top or bottom. This is referred to as a rotation. And knowing when to do this, how to do it properly so that you don't trade gold on the opposing side, all of these are fantastic skills that more advanced players need to be able to learn if they want to be more successful. Continuing in that trend, vision control, maintaining a level of vision that allows for plays and rotations to be done effectively. This is, at the beginning, one of the hardest things for my students to get right. They struggle a lot with learning how vision works and knowing just the state of the game, where the opposing team is most likely to be, paying attention to what objectives are available, and vision assists with this, but it is a learned skill. And then finally, of course, communication. As I mentioned before, that transition from solo queue into playing as a team can be quite difficult for some new players. And it takes time to train them to the level that you want them to be at and communicate effectively, not just, I'm dying, it's a bad time. And so these are all fundamental skills that you can learn from any level, and any player at any level can improve upon.
So we're going to talk through our practice schedules now. The main focus of this section is going to be creating a practice schedule, setting player and team goals, and then drills that we go through, and training styles, and then scrimmaging.
So these are my example practice schedules. I noticed that some of you guys in the Q&A mentioned what are some good techniques for to teach beginning players. These are what I have all of my level 1 students doing, with my higher level students watching and giving advice and critiques. First of all, for my advanced players, if they want to flex that day, they'll do 1v1s to start up. It's a nice way to start the game. It gets you into the mechanics, it gets you in the mindset, and makes sure everything is working properly. No messed up keyboards or mice. It makes sure everything is going smoothly. And I'll typically have my veterans doing 1v1s if they're not assisting new players. As far as the new players go, I have 3 that I currently work them through. I have 2 1v1 skill matches that all my new players go through and practice on throughout the year. One of the characters referred to as Ezreal. I have them train to both shoot skill shots. Before I continue, skill shots are abilities in the game that require you to be pointing at the opposing character and hit them in time. They have a travel speed and they do damage or their effect when they land, as opposed to non-skill shots, which hit the person automatically without you having to have anything special on them. I have them practice skill shots using 2 characters, Ezreal and Morgana. Ezreal because he has low cooldowns and can have some mobility. Morgana because her abilities actually move fairly slow, and once you're good, you can actually learn to dodge and land your skill shots more effectively, with 2 champions that are very low cost in the game as well. I also do scuttle racing, which is you practice what's referred to as kiting. Kiting is the ability to move while you're doing damage. So in the game, there's animations for everything you want to do. You want to shoot a skill shot, it requires a certain amount of animation. You want to cast a summoner spell, it has an animation to it. And usually those animations cause you to stop moving very briefly. The best players learn to kite, which is where you move in between attacks and casting of spells. And you can practice this with one of the minions that exists on the map at all times, called the Scuttle Crab. We also run 5-minute minion contests. I have a banner in my room which showcases what the current top-rated students are for the minion contest. It's 5 minutes, max minions, no items, no abilities. And for my advanced players, it still provides them a challenge, even if they've been playing for 2 or 3 years. For my new players, they quickly see the difference, because a new player might get 10 minions in 5 minutes, and an advanced player will get 50. And they get to see that, yes, this is how you get it, and that's how you get gold, and this is how you tend to progress forward into the game. Once the warm-ups have been done, usually takes between 5 to 10 minutes, as you can see from most of the things we have. We'll either run solo or duo queue if not all of our members are available. This is dependent upon what lane they want to be practicing or playing. For duo queue, I recommend certain groupings, which you can see listed here, based upon learning good synergies with the other person. This is based upon what a lot of pro teams do, and it works very well to learn them to communicate more effectively and play around the map a little bit better. And then solo queue, I put not recommended, mainly because I've seen a lot of students learn toxicity in solo queue that I do not allow in my room. I'll have students who think they can bring their solo queue mentalities into my room and quickly learn that I will solo them out the door. It is not to be put up with. I, in fact, have a requirement that my all chat, which is the ability to chat between yourself and the opposing team, be turned off at all times whenever they're in practice with me. This is mainly because it is an open communication game. You can send any message you want to your opposing team, whether it be a positive or a negative thing. And tilt is real. Finally, if I have all my players there, they're not going to be doing solo or duo queue. They're going to be playing as a team. If they want to have fun that day, they may play a rotating game mode, such as right now Earth is out, Ultra Rapid Fire, and some of mine were playing that a little bit ago. ARAM is fun, or of course Summoner's Rift, SR. But if all of them are there, I want them playing ranked games as a 5-person team so that they can feel like they are a true team and get more time in the game together. All of this is again, meeting towards that first primary goal, which is to get physical time in the game to learn the game's mechanics and the other parts of the game that they need to learn as soon as possible. And so that's a big part of my practice schedule. What about yours, Mitch?
So my practices, I have kind of a unique situation, which I think a lot of people can relate to. My school is a Title I school, and so a lot of my kids don't have computers at home. Um, and we also share a 3-floor school building with 2 other schools. And so because of that, our school day doesn't start until 9, and we don't get out until 4:30, which means that if we're having practice after school, if we're running a 2-hour practice, kids wouldn't be getting home until 7:30 or 8. Um, so my practice schedule is very much like bare bones. This is like the minimum, and I restrict it to an hour and a half so that kids are getting home by about 6:30. So I always start the day with warm-ups. I do stretches. Everybody has to stretch before we play. I suffer from wrist injuries from too much gaming, and so I don't want any of my kids to go through that. And so we do wrist, neck, shoulder stretching. Then we do 1v1s, very similar to what Cameron was saying. 10 minutes, first blood, first tower, first 100 CS. Then we get into sort of like the more practice stuff, and typically what I'll do for this segment, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes, is I'll go over the game plan for the week, or I'll highlight a skill that we're focusing on, for example, vision, or we're focusing on getting the first dragon this week, and then I usually introduce with like a slide deck, this is how we would do it. These are the skills required. Then we have time to play one game, and it's typically flex queue, which means all 5 players on the varsity team play together. Right now, I have 5 varsity players. I have 1 sub, and then I have 4 new kids. I don't let new kids play until the spring of their first year, because the game is really, really hard, and I don't want them jumping in and just losing every single game in the season, because that's not fun. So usually if we have time, we'll play an ARAM or like a custom game, do like 1v1s, where we're all in the same lobby and I shout out like so and so is 1v1ing so and so. Something like more fun to just close out practice that takes like 20 minutes or less. And then on Wednesdays we do match film review. So we watch the game that we played the day before. We typically forego the practice segment in favor of this, and I try to highlight something that we did well or did not do well, and try to fix it. One thing of note, if you do plan to do practice in this way, on Wednesdays the game updates, and when the game updates, you cannot watch replays in the game itself. You have to watch a recorded video of it. So if you're streaming the game, you can watch it on rewatch it on Twitch. If you are playing from if you're doing this at school, there's a variety of different software that can screen capture the game. Usually, in my opinion, the easiest way to do this is you join the game as a spectator and then record your own screen, so that you don't have to worry about the kids doing it. This is the image that we were referring to earlier, by the way. This symbol in the top right here is the tournament symbol. So you would click on the play button in the top left here, and then you enter your tournament code by clicking on the trophy in the top right. And then you just Control V, the tournament code, and then it'll get you right into the drawing a blank. The match.
The tournament, yeah.
Yes.
I did also want to point out on that previous slide that one of the big tools that some of the new players don't know is the training tool. It's the second icon there. A lot of my new players do co-op versus AI in order to get familiar with how some of the character mechanics work, but the training tool is fantastic. It contains both your introductory training, which is what you first get when you first log in and create an account, as well as a more advanced practice tool, The practice tool is fantastic for testing out new builds without having other players in the game. It's essentially a sandbox of the game. You can assign yourself gold. You can assign yourself, different opponents on the opposing team. You can move around the map and try out different things. It's really a useful tool, and my students spend roughly 20% of their practice time on a day-to-day basis in the training tool itself. So I did want to point that out as well. All right, so Vaude review. My students, we have dedicated Vaude reviews. We have one short one immediately after the game is over. I will have my students, we don't typically watch the game itself. We will point out things that we want to watch on the review the next day. This is mainly to do while it's fresh in their mind, and you get the raw feedback right away, because sometimes when you're playing a game like this, there'll be a lot of situations where you're not 100%. Things started to go wrong, and you want to be able to talk and address some of those issues before they've had a night of sleeping on it, because sometimes they can cause it to explode into something bigger, or they can forget about it entirely. And so I usually have a short VOD review immediately afterwards where I'm like, okay, we're going to watch it at like 5 times speed and point out things you need to work on tomorrow and things you need to look at closer tomorrow to give us a more focused next day VOD review. And then in the games themselves, my big thing is to always be looking for things that we can improve as a team first, that we have control over. You cannot control in the game how the other players play the game. You can only control your reactions to it and how you approach those reactions and how you communicate those with your team. And so a significant part of our review, when you do the VOD reviews, you can see usually the entire screen, which is unusual. In game, you can usually only see your side of the map with your characters and your vision. But when you rewatch the game, you can see how the opposing team does. So I focus a lot of my time on analyzing the match and saying, okay, why did you decide to make this decision? Like what information on the map led you in this direction? Was it just a feeling that you had? Did you decide to go this way because of something that you saw or that you just thought you were better? And then we will watch it a second time where we try to look at the holistic picture and see ways that we could improve based upon what the opponent was doing. Did they have a really good jungle path at the very beginning to get them, max level? Did they buy items differently that, in the early game had a big advantage for their team or lost them an advantage? All these things are really good. And so our board reviews are one of the biggest things we do. And I actually have one of my former players who's in college now. He runs our board review with our kids. Because he's playing at a high level and plays with a college team, he gets a lot out of watching them play because it makes him analyze his games a lot more. And so in that time period, we have students run it. I very rarely will interject anything unless it starts to become a unhealthy atmosphere where they're calling out somebody for something. I will instead let them run as much as they can and to see what they notice. And if it's something that they need to be corrected upon or that they missed, only then will I typically step in, because I want them to feel agency and ownership of what they're doing and grow to be better players themselves. And so we spend probably too much time doing VOD reviews of our games, but I think it is always worth it to do so if you have it available. And speaking of what Mitch was talking about in terms of software, I use Twitch and OBS Studios. Twitch to stream the games live and OBS Studios to capture the games. We can watch it later. It's fantastic. It's a great resource. And we have had many games that we have lost because we didn't record them before the update. And so if you are going to do VOD reviews, either if you have the time, do it that night, but otherwise record it with some kind of software and have it available for yourselves the next day.
So a little bit about some map awareness. So you have the map in the bottom right of your screen in game. You have these things called pings, and a lot of in the chat we were kind of discussing a little bit about how the game can get a little negative sometimes. This game does have a reputation for negativity. One of the ways that players can be negative is by using the ping system. And the system exists so that you can help your teammates, not so that you can harm them. And so typically it's a really good idea to teach your players how to properly ping to make other players aware of what's going on the map, other than just using regular communication. Instead of saying so and so is over there, they can ping exactly where they are and say jungle here, and the whole team will know. Early game strategy, you definitely want to discuss in practice. Early game is typically called laning phase. This is one of the most important things that you can teach your kids is how to play laning phase out. Not only because it sets the stage for what's going to happen later in the game, but also because it can be the most frustrating part of the game. And um, teaching your kids both to understand that it's how to win it, but then also understand that it's not the only part of the game, is very important, to having them be healthy players. First
I'll,
ganks and scuttle control.
I'll interject for these two
Yeah,
if you
go
want.
for it.
So there are very few things as a coach that you can pre-plan. You can pre-plan the beginning of the game, the first about 5 minutes. You usually have a pretty solid game plan for. I have my students prep out what they want to do the first guaranteed 3 minutes. This is mainly because this is the first chance you have to play your lane, and the junglers can have their first big step towards agency in the game itself. And so you can actually prep them and say, okay, I want my jungler to start at this location and kill these monsters so that they can end up over here to get off a gank. Remember, a gank is a way in which to attack the opposing players by creating a numbers advantage on the map. And so those early games can be decided from the beginning. You can prep them beforehand. You can talk to them in the game lobby and say, okay, based upon these characters that you're playing, I want you to try to do this. I want to go this way. And the players can communicate that to you, and they can communicate that to your team. My jungler is constantly the first few minutes of the game being like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is my first step. And from there, we can play it, by ear and make adjustments as we go. But I know these are the first couple of things I want to do. And like that really does help to have that preset to start the game, because sometimes the games can start to feel a little chaotic at the beginning if you're not 100% sure of what you're going to do. And especially if something happens that you're not expecting, like, for example, if the opposing team invades or does something that is completely unexpected, that kind of stuff can help with your pre-planning if you have it prepared beforehand. And then finally, the hard part for my team. So he talked about laning phase being difficult, and it is definitely difficult to get right. It usually involves individual skill and character knowledge. My team struggled the most with mid and late game control, knowing when to go towards a dragon, when to go towards a baron, when to be aggressive and pushing forward, when to be non-aggressive and pulling back. And that is something that you as a coach have no input on in the game. And so a lot of the times my students, they need that practice the most. And so that's where playing so much solo queue can be helpful, or duo queuing or playing games in your own time, because you get the drill down. You get to play more and more of those games and see how to play it well and see how to play it poorly. You can also look at Vaude reviews of pro players and see, how they take mid and late game objective control and how they play it out. And if you have a good enough Vaude reviewer, you can actually see, and hear why it is this team suddenly just ran away. And you might be looking at it and watching the game going, well, that didn't make any sense to me, but they knew something was different, that they knew they couldn't win. And that information only comes from just serious time in the game.
So early vision, both in mid and top lane, is very important. As a mid laner, if you are on the blue side, these are really good spots that you want to get early vision on. I typically tell my kids that this spot right here is the most important spot, and on the opposite side right here, it's the most important spot to get vision, especially early, because typically it's pretty simple to get there and get out. But it also reveals a lot of areas that the enemy jungler is going to try and go through. These bushes right here are also very good for vision. And this position right here is also good for that same reason. There's a lot of pathways that go through there that the jungler is going to need to go through to get to different spots. However, this spot can be challenging for some, especially newer players, to get to. As a top laner, some good positions to put vision right in front of the Baron pit. in this bush right here, this is newer players will typically put their vision right here, and it's the spot that most new players like to put vision. And then this, we call this the tri bush. This is another really good spot to put vision as well. The reason you want vision in these spots as a top laner is because these are all positions that the enemy jungler has to go through to get to you. I don't know if Cameron, you had anything you wanted to add to this slide?
I would just say that there's plenty of information out there, that resources that is showcased, like when and where to place wards. Because a ward that never sees anybody is not a bad ward. It just needs to be a part of how your team plays the game. Again, it goes back to repetition. The more you play it, the more times you die to somebody from coming up the river, the more likely you are to be like, maybe I should put a ward there so I don't let that happen ever again.
Absolutely.
It's one that your team has to get used to, and is one that your team can have a direct effect on. They can put a ward there. Like, you died, did you check your ward? Did you place a ward? Like it's one of those things that I make my teams frustrated sometimes, because I'll be like, oh, I hear you're angry over there. Let me guess, did you die from river? They're like, yes. Like, is there a ward there? No. Okay. We have a conversation again. So as far as communication goes, as a reminder, in PlayVS, you are being held to a high standard with your players. They are being held to the same standard as if they were in a standard school setting. And so cleaning communication up can be one of those things that you practice outside of the game. I know that my players tend to struggle with being negative, especially if they've been playing a lot of solo queue. And some of them can be toxic. I've had to remove players in the past because they would say things that are inappropriate, both in regular games, just during practice. And I even had one that did it while actually in a tournament game. We had to remove him because he didn't want to change. And so you want to know both what's good communication going to sound like and what bad communication sounds like. And it helps to have Vaude reviews that include the comms of the team. I don't like to post those personally. Like, I don't put those on Twitch myself, mainly because I know these are kids who will make mistakes and I don't want them to be held to that. But I will keep a track of that, and I will rarely look at those, but I will have my players watch them themselves and listen to them. Like, listen to them with their eyes closed and say, what is going on in the game? Can you tell where everybody is just by listening to what they're saying and talking about? And so learning good communication is one of those that the more time the team gets to spend together is very, very important. And as Mitch mentioned, he's got a Title I school. So do I. We're a big Title I school, but 90% of my students can't have internet at home. They just don't. And so their best practice time is while they're here. And we spend a lot of the time just being like, okay, who's talking? Who's not talking? Why are you talking? Why are you not talking? Are you sending out good information? Do you have anything that needs to be said? And a lot of the times, whenever students, they get to that natural psychological reaction of flight or fright, and they'll get into trouble. The opposing team will come to kill them. And instead of telling the team, hey, I'm in trouble. Hey, I need help. Hey, this needs to happen. They instead are just so focused upon how do I get out of this bad situation that they don't ever communicate with the rest of the team. And so learning that team communication is super important. One of the biggest things that has been successful for our teams has been to increase their communication and having good communication.
Absolutely. So some resources. This slide is all the resources that you could ever need. It's got the coach handbook, which is available on the website, the high school competition rulebook, the League of Legends rulebook, game day protocol, support, the Discord channel, the coach chat playlist, which is on the Discord, and then some YouTube coaching guides. Just like Melanie said, you're going to receive this presentation with all the links. So I highly recommend you look through all of these. Some other links that might be valuable that I'm going to just throw in the chat. I use very regularly na.op.gg.
Mm-hmm.
And I also use blitz.gg.
Yep.
Both of these websites are very good for learning about specific champions outside of the game. I'm talking like items and runes and matchups. And when I say matchups, I mean like what percentage of Camille players can beat a Darius player.
Hmm.
And knowing that allows you to better game plan, especially if you're going against a team where their top laner only plays Darius, for example. Are there any others that you wanted to add, Cameron?
I know that some members of my team, there are some add-ons you can get that also give extra information. LolWiz used to be really popular, but it's kind of died down. That provides like information in the pick ban phase to tell you, hey, if you're going against this character, you might want to run these runes. You might want to run these summoner spells. And for my new players, like it gives them a little bit of like, okay, like I at least have this part that I'm pretty sure is right before I get in game and start trying to play my best game. And like I said, those can be valuable tools, but it really depends on how well you use them and how good you are at using them yourself. And I don't know about you, Mitch. My students don't have laptops at home, like we mentioned. And so I don't allow them to install add-ons into our school computers. But I know that the students that I do have, some of them have installed them at home. And so you might recommend it as well.
Yeah, I use Blitz at home, and when I was starting out, the Blitz add-on took my game from like iron to silver. Like my rank just skyrocketed as soon as I started using it, just because it takes um, the information overload in your brain away and just has your computer do it. The one thing I will add to this is I don't recommend Mobifier. A lot of kids end up there, and it's basically very detailed guides for how to play characters the wrong way,
Mhm.
is what I tell most of them. And that can be fun if you are a very good player. But if you're a new player and you end up there, it's not going to be valuable. So don't fall into that trap.
I would add on to that and say that a lot of the modifier guides that they have out there are like decent if you have certain skills down. Like if
Yes.
you are good at CSing, if you have good vision control already, like if you've gotten past those first few hurdles that are so hard for many of these guys to get past, if you've gotten past that, then something like Mobifier could help you get a little bit of an edge if you don't have the time to put in to those extra games. But otherwise, like you might as well be reading, something in another language because you're not going to be able to do what it says to do, no matter how good you think you are. You got to have the time first to get those other skills down pat.
Definitely.
I did notice we have some Q&As. You want to talk about the first one that we have up there with 2 votes?
Yeah, so how do you have players compete for sports on team? Do they 1v1? Do you just go by rank or do you just go with team synergy? So I don't have enough players to do like a formal tryout. However, um if I did, I would 100% say that rank means very little to me. My team captain last year is silver. He has been silver since for the last 3 years, and we had another player who is now playing in college, and he was diamond ranked. And our team captain was sick one day, and I asked him to step up, and it was our worst game of the season. Rank means very, very little in my mind. In terms of putting a comp together, it's 100% team synergy.
I could agree with that, definitely. I don't even look at my students' ranks whenever I ask that question. I have them play games and see if they fit in well. Now, many times the higher ranked students do better just because they have more time and have the raw skill. Like the difference, the joking that many of my former players have said to me before is that the difference between a gold player and a diamond player is not skill; it's knowledge of the game, like how well you know your matchups and all that stuff. And it's not about whether you're good at the game itself. It's just you know enough to get past a certain threshold. And so I don't care if my team. I have 3 teams technically, 2 actual teams and 1 team of subs. And like there will be times when I'll be like, okay, I want this player to sit out just because I want him to sit out. I want to see if a new player is going to have good synergy or bad synergy, or I want them to learn from something. And my students know that it's not a personal thing. I'm not taking them out because I think they're doing poorly or that I think this person's going to replace them. I'm taking them out because I want to see these other people step up and grow. In terms of my final team for the season, it's always based purely upon how well they work together. A team that works well together can defeat a higher ranked team any day of the week, as long as they work well together and
Absolutely.
know how to play the game. Like, it's just that ranking. I agree. I've been gold my whole life ever since I started playing. I was gold season 2, and I've been gold ever since. And I always love playing with the kids. Whenever we got like a summer break or something, and they'll be like, "We're playing against a diamond. Oh no!" And I'll be like, "Guys, chill. It's just another player. And if we play well, we will beat them just as we beat anybody else. And we will lose to bronzes. It will not matter. You just got to play your game and work to improve."
Absolutely. So what are some good LoL drills and strategies? I love the 1v1 first player to get 100 CS, or first tower, or first blood. I think it's a phenomenal strategy, um, especially for laning phase. I know there was another question further down. Good drills for junglers. That is a tough question. I recommend, I'm going to throw it into the chat. There's a new-ish website called jungle.gg.
Mm-hmm.
That is very good. It shows you paths that junglers should take. And so a good strategy is to have your kids run through those paths, figure out which ones they like. And also, I would recommend trying to jungle clear as quickly as possible on their own. That's a good strategy for like a higher level player.
Agreed. I like our 5-minute drills that we do with CSing. Killing minions of the opposing team is one of those skills that if you learn it, you just automatically get better gold than the other team does. If there was an old YouTube video from a streamer who no longer streams anymore, he used to say, like, if I have 280 carries, one's got 40 minions and one's got 100 minions at 10 minutes, I know exactly which one I want on my team. It doesn't matter anything else. And so running those short drills, it's nice because they're quick. They're only 5 minutes. And my students can get in, do them quickly, and move on, or they can just do them back to back to back and try to beat their own scores. And we actually give out rewards to my kids whenever we do one of those drills. There's weekly rewards, usually something small, like we have a little crown that you get to wear in practice. It's from Burger King. It's awesome. And the kids just think it's funny. But the end of each quarter, we actually have, like, we give out the top 3 get riot points to buy things in game, the cosmetic stuff. And the kids, by the end of the semester, the kids who haven't been doing anything all semester will come in and try to get those. And I've been impressed every time, because I also have it that if I ever beat any of them, they don't get anything. And that's usually good motivation for them to put some time in.
So how do you convince players to practice as if they were playing a match? That is going to come down to team culture. What you have to do is you have to. It's very specific for each team. I've been kind of blessed in that my kids are pretty serious. I typically get about 50 kids that sign up for the team out of a 450 person school, which is a huge, and then I end up with 5 after like 2 weeks. I very much have like a, if you don't fit the culture of this team, then that's your choice. But you need to fit in. Like, you need to make you fit. We're not going to fit to you, type of thing. So if you're not taking it seriously, then that's on you. You're probably not going to get playtime. Cameron, if you want to add.
I would say, so I was reading one of the other questions.
No worries.
My brain? No. What was the question again? Sorry.
How do you convince
Tony's
a player to take practices seriously?
I typically have my students video their voices to hear how they sound, and have them watch the next day. And like, if I particularly am worried about a student, I will have them submit a little report to me. like a half page synopsis of what they did that game and what went well and what went wrong. I will treat it like an actual class, and my students know that, and they know that like if I see something that is going wrong, I'm going to make them like look at it and question it, because I have had players in the past who didn't want to do those kinds of things. They didn't want to put in the time and effort to be professional and act in the way that was appropriate for the club, and they know that they'll be happy to be gone. But I am never going to force a kid out because of it. Like, it will always be by their choice that they didn't want to improve, they didn't want to get better, they didn't want to act the way that was appropriate. And so most of the time, if I'm having an issue where I feel like a student is not acting in a way and taking practices seriously, I have them record the match, I have them record their voices. And then if I had exactly one time I had to do it, I brought a parent in to listen to the game. And you want to see a kid's face go pale. It's the second they realize that they said some bad words in that match, and they know it, and they know they weren't supposed to, and they were raging, and then they have to sit there and watch it with their parents and talk about how they were going to improve. And it's the small oldies but goldies that sometimes work like that. These are high school kids. That does not mean that they're not still afraid of their parents sometimes and don't want to show off to their peers. I will even have some of my students share views and VODs of themselves playing and critique each other. It takes a special group to do that. I've had mixed success. Sometimes they work great and will give each other positive feedback and work amazing. Other times they will see it as another opportunity to be hateful little people. And it just depends. It's about that culture first, though. I would definitely agree with Mitch on that. Like, having the right culture first means that you will have fewer problems with these other issues down the road.
So what are some good techniques for coaching beginner players? This is my favorite thing. My number one favorite thing, I have one other person that I coach with, the music teacher at our school, and he really likes working with the more experienced players. I love starting with new players. None of our kids, I've never had a kid come in. I had one kid actually who came in having played the game at all before. My strategy with the new players, first I have them play through the tutorial and then play at least one beginner bot level game. Typically, if it's beginner level bots, they're going to play it and they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to smoke these bots, and they end up getting crushed. As quickly as possible, I want to get them out of the bot games and into real games, and I put myself on their team so that they can learn to be carried by another player. In addition to that, bots do not play like regular people. They have ridiculous mechanics that make no sense, and so playing against them is not good for you. It develops very bad habits. The first thing that I always teach my kids is focus on not dying. I don't care how many kills you get. All I care about is how many deaths you have. And as soon as you're under double digits is when you can start learning the next skill, which is CS, and that's just killing minions. Once you start getting to about the 4 or 5 minions killed per minute mark is when I start allowing you to compete with the varsity level team. And from there, it's depending on the position that you're playing, it's all different branches of opportunity for you.
I would say that with my beginning players, I am fortunate that we actually have a summer school program that has esports as part of the program. And so I actually have a different coach who goes with them and works with them. All my varsity members sign up every single year. They do it because they get to count it as a credit towards graduation as an elective. It's nice. It's not a system that everybody gets to have, and I understand that. And
That's
so
the
I would.
Dream.
It's I want to coach it every year, but I'm stuck doing stuff at the local community college, and it's terrible. But like the nice thing is, like, my students during those times, my veterans do not get to practice at all over that time period. Instead, what you do is they have to work with and take under their wing newer players and showcase them how the mechanics are supposed to work, how the different characters work, answer questions, and figure out. The big part for us is what do you want to play? Because many of the players, this is a big, complicated game. If they came from Fortnite, where it's literally like, okay, I have a couple guns I can choose from, I have a few build mechanics, and then that's the best it can be. Like they go from a game like that to a game like League, where you have 130 characters that can build, 40 different items, and each of those items can be offset by runes and offset by summoner spells and all these other things. It becomes this huge flood of information, and I want to get them sorted as fast as possible into, do you want to try up to 2 roles? I tell them, okay, you're going to be having this person under your wing, teach them your role, and then in 2 days, you're going to switch people with somebody else, and they're going to teach them that role. And then eventually I'll find that these students self-sort. They'll be like, okay, I seem like the kind of person who would be really good at mid, because this is how the mid player talks and how they play and the characters they play, and I like these characters. If I can get them excited about a character, or I can get them excited about a lane, then I don't have to sit there and watch them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they're going to do it. They're going to get up and find a way to get more practice time. Whereas on the other hand, if they don't even know what lane they're going to be in, they're just going to be constantly throwing their hands in the air, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And that's not enough. So I have them practice and rotate with veterans, usually about 2 practices with each lane. So that gives you about 2 weeks for us. We have practices 5 days a week. And after those 2 weeks, we start to look at it and say, okay, let's now focus on the little stuff, how you can actually get better. Because if I can't tell you what lane to be in, like, I want to coach you to be good at this part of the game. And all my players are required to learn 2 roles, no matter what place they're in. It's so that if we need to, we can substitute in other spots. With so many players, we need that ability to be flexible. And so I have some new students this year who are, like, some of them are doing top and mid, some are doing top and jungle, some are doing mid and support, some are doing mid and AD carry. It depends. It's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. And the sooner I can get them in that slot, then I can start to be like, okay, here's some resources to help you. Here's some YouTubers you can follow. Here's people that is on the varsity team that can assist you and be good. And all of that stuff is just more good things for them to have in their pocket to help them grow and improve.
So I am gonna go ahead and just answer one more, just because I have to get going, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I'm gonna answer Tony's question, because he's from my hometown. Shout out San Jose. So at what point do you think a new player would people such as LS, Saber, or Mid Beast be good for? I'm assuming these are all streamers. There are many new players for our school who look to some of these, however, do not gain anything from them. I in terms of streamers that I recommend, I am a huge, and might be controversial, but I am a huge fan of Nice. He has a sailor's mouth, but he has a lot of knowledge, and he's very, very good for new players. So if your kids don't mind a little bit of swearing, or if parents don't mind that, then I would highly recommend him. Um, in terms of, I'm assuming these are like more advanced players who don't give so much knowledge. I don't see any harm in having your kids watch them, as long as they are not toxic. Like Tyler One is probably the most popular League streamer, and he is a horrible, horrible person. I would not, if I was you, I would not let your kids watch him, or try to shut it down as much as possible. So avoiding toxicity, but you could still watch these high level streamers. All it's going to do, the only thing it's going to do is build hype for the game. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. However, if kids are starting to watch these streamers and say, I want to do what they're doing, it's important that you isolate what specifically they're looking to try and do. Similar to MOBA Fire. If Mid Beast is, I don't know who he is, but I'm assuming he plays mid. If Mid Beast plays AP Yasuo mid, he's probably playing it on an account that's brand new, and he's playing against brand new players. So telling your kids, making sure that they understand that, and then making sure that they understand, like, this is what goes into doing that, being able to do that, is the most important thing. Ultimately, in my opinion, it's a learning opportunity, so no reason not to do it.
I'm about controversial. I've been a huge fan of Bunny Fufu. I have a jersey of his. I met him at one of the events one year. Not great for teaching anymore, but he's always a character. I like watching the streamers. I think they're funny. But in terms of actual content, very few of them have I found that actually provide good quality content. The one I would recommend personally, and I will put the name in the description. He's a European YouTuber called Foxdrop. He's a jungler, and my jungle roles have been the hardest to get filled and be good and consistent. And he teaches jungling specifically to improve players and to teach new people how to be better at it. And so I cannot stress enough. Like, I encourage my kids. I'm like, if you want to watch a YouTuber because they're funny or like they're entertaining, that's one thing. But don't expect to learn much. Find a couple YouTubers. They may be boring, but you will find that there are some great YouTubers out there, some great Twitch streamers that will showcase some amazing things that can help you individually improve. That you should look for them as your primary means to educate yourself. You can have fun watching some of the other ones, but find somebody who's going to give you good quality content that's going to help you to improve, not just show you, oh, look, I got a pentakill, I'm so good, yay for me. Like, that doesn't help you get better. Find people who are actually going to assist you and show you how to play the game better. But as Mitch mentioned, like, I cannot stress enough, if you don't have those base skills down, you can watch as many of these people play as you want. They ain't never going to help you get better. All they're going to do is teach you that, oh, if I just try this one spicy build, I'll be good. It's like, no, they can do it because they're good. They can do all the other things well. And they just happen to play something that is off meta is the term. And get good at the game first, then worry about looking cool.
So I just updated the link. It's actually going to be jung.gg. I apologize. But thanks, everyone. Sorry if I wasn't able to get to questions. If you have any more, I will go ahead and put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. With any more questions or follow-up or setting up scrims. I'm also totally up for that. But thanks, everybody. Take care.
See you, Mitch.
Thank you, Mitch. All right, Cameron, it's up to you if you want to keep answering questions. We have a few more minutes. I have
It's
this
either
on
this or
until
eat food. So
5:30. Okay, your
I
choice.
like food, but I'll answer what I can, and
Okay.
I'll give my best and honest advice.
Awesome. Cool. I'll let you do it. We'll go for 15 more minutes and then I'll close it up.
All right, sounds good. Looks like we got one here from Daniel. Let's see. Do you make new accounts for League Unlocked? What is the best practice for using League Unlocked? Personally, I am vehemently against using League Unlocked on a new account, mainly because there's nothing worse than when you go into a new set and you're trying to play appropriately against a team and you have no idea what they're playing because they're playing on an alt account. Like, the purpose, if you watch any of the league scenes for the LCS or the LEC or any of the Koreans or the Chinese, they know what the other teams are going to play, and they get to use that to their advantage and prep strategies against them and how they're going to play. And so I discourage my students every year from making a new account for League Unlocked because I want my opponents to be able to look at them so that they get the best opponents they can get. If that makes any sense. Like,
I'm going to
really
add that is also against our rules. They're supposed to use their main account. So please don't do that. Because, that's technically against our rules for all the reasons that you said. You should be able to properly scout. Now, we do have some schools that have privacy policy issues, and so they will assign a school account. That is fine. We're fine with that just because, everybody has different policies. However, if you're not doing that, please have the kids use their main account and make sure it's PG. Please read it out loud to yourself. That's my other one. I always, for some reason, nobody seems to care. I care. I read them. And if I have to help with broadcasts and I see an inappropriate name, you could get forfeited. So please, those are two big things. Main account, keep it clean.
There's a standing policy on my team that you're not allowed to play on a tournament if anybody has a problem with your name for that reason, because we did have somebody who I didn't catch it. Like, I just didn't catch it. And we got into a game, and the opposing coach sent me a text, and they were like, is that supposed to be their name? And I was like, oh, no. And, yeah, we ended up losing that game because we had to forfeit the second round because we were breaking the rules. And
Yeah.
it happens.
Urban Dictionary, as scary as it can be, please check it if there are any. And it can be as a simple name. I almost put an example, but I'm not sure you'll want to look it up. But yeah, just check it.
I would say, as far as best practices go for using League Unlocked, I encourage my students during the season to get as much time as they can into actually practicing with champions they don't currently own, to breed excitement and to prevent burnout. If you end up playing the same, 5 characters all season long, you're going to get frustrated by the game and not feel like you're having a good time. And League Unlocked is an amazing resource that I'm so happy that PlayVS has been able to get for us. I could not imagine a better thing for my students to have than the ability to get to pick any champion they want and actually get time to learn. And we encourage them, like, in game, I want them to play things that they're comfortable with. In game, I want them to play things that they think they're going to do well on and fill in with our team comps. But otherwise, I encourage them to use League Unlocked to help them to practice to get better. And as the secondary part to it, if you have League Unlocked, like, it helps to practice bad matchups, like to pick something that you think will lose and then see how it's going to take for you to win. Because if you watch the people who are good at this game, if you watch the Twitch streamers, if you watch the people who play in the pro leagues, they can take a matchup that is supposed to lose and still come out ahead and still win, as long as they play the game properly. And the students need to see that. They need to know that that's possible. That just because, they picked Teemo into Renekton, that means I lose. It's like, no, it don't. It doesn't. If you play this properly, you can still win and beat them any day of the week as long as you play it right. And they need that sometimes. I think we already discussed a little bit about the good coaching techniques for new players. My biggest thing is always to get them there first. Mitch mentioned that he starts with about 50, and by the end of the first few weeks that he's down to about 10. Melanie mentioned in the bio that my last practice I actually was up to 60 at one point, which for my school is pretty good. And I have consistently 30 showing up to practice for all the different games. That is because very quickly they learn whether or not they're actually going to fit in with our team culture and whether or not they're going to take it seriously. Last year I stopped offering Fortnite as a game because the people who wanted to play it because they wanted to play with their friends, not because they wanted to compete and get better. And that's a hard decision to make. It sucks especially if you're fighting for funding, to kick out students. And these could be students that you like. These could be students that you have a relationship with. But at the same time, if it's going to lead to a negative culture, the culture has to be right first. And if the culture is right, a lot of other issues will be fixed because you don't have to worry about whether they're going to be, rejecting your teaching strategies, whether they're going to be relying upon you whenever you tell them to do something. You just avoid all of that because they have faith in you, they trust you, and you've developed that atmosphere where they also have faith and trust in each other. Any other questions? Like, I'm here. I got nothing but to do. I got books and art in my room, so otherwise it's that. So.
Yeah, I think you all addressed the drills for junglers. Is there anything that they can do to learn the runes and items other than going to jung.gg?
So a lot of times that in order to assist with this, I encourage patch notes to be seen. A lot of the students that are new don't really look at the patch notes because they don't know enough about the game in the first place to know what is good and how to play it. Whereas the students, once they get to a certain point, usually once they're able to pick their own runes and stuff, I have them going through and trying to optimize what they think will be good when we get that first patch note. Because when the patch notes come out, they usually release the same day the patch itself comes out. And these include updates to runes, updates to champions, updates to the map. It really is a big deal sometimes. And suddenly a change to an item could mean that this person who was amazing last patch is now just garbage, just can't be played, or at least not that way anymore. And a lot of the times, every 2 weeks with the cycle of new patches, it is very easy to get frustrated that the game has changed, especially with something that you liked. I'm a support main. I love tank engage supports. I've played them for years. And anytime the enchanter supports, the caster supports, the damage supports come out, my first thought is, oh, please, no, not again. I do not want to play in this. I do not want to play this game. I see a Zyra on the enemy team. I'm like, please, no. Please don't do it. And so I have them reading through the patch notes to try to figure out what's going to be better. And that's really beneficial for the junglers specifically. If the jungler does not know enough about how the lanes are going to play, then they can't do their job very well. If you don't know as a jungler, hey, this top laner is going to be really strong the first 5 minutes of the game, you can either avoid it in order to try to minimize damage to your team, or you can try to kill them and try to create an advantage out of that situation that should be a losing one. And my junglers have mandatory patch days where they have to go through and read the patch notes and think about what this is going to mean. And they're not always right. I'm not always right. But it helps them to learn and be critical and think about it, which are skills that they can take outside of the game anywhere they want to go, which I think is also important. So patch notes is what I would say. Patch notes, patch notes, patch notes.
Great. I'm going to skip down because you do mention that you have quite a few players and you have multiple teams in multiple games.
Yes.
So to the one that's the best way to delegate practice for multiple games and the best way to get all students involved competitively when limited on space and systems.
Sure. So I am quite fortunate that I have a large team. I am less fortunate in that I may have 60 players, but I have 25 computers. And if they all show up one day, well, you can do the math. I'm the math teacher. It's not a good time. And so I always have dedicated things. And to preface all of this, I have developed coaches for each of my team among the players. These are not my best players. These are the players that work the best with the other players. Mitch mentioned this, that his team captain was silver, a relatively low rank, compared to one of his substitutes who was diamond, a very high rank. And rank means nothing when it comes to my practices. What matters is how well they work with the team. And so every day of practice, the week before on Friday, I have a council meeting where I meet with all of my mini coaches and we decide what is going to be done the next week. And they have to pick 2 things they can work on in game that they have to be able to be at a computer for, and 2 things they can work on without a computer. You know, team communication, trust building exercises are great things for esports. You know, anything that you could do to help a football team learn to talk to each other can be done for an esports team too. You just have to focus it a little bit differently. And so I cannot stress enough that having that atmosphere and having things that students can do that are not in game is equally important. Because while it sucks that not every student will be able to practice every single day, what is important is that they have something that they can learn from. So when I talked about patch notes, that's on the list for my league players. If there's not enough computers, I will tell my junglers, okay, today you guys are doing patch notes. You're going to go sit in the corner. You're going to talk to each other about it. You're going to compare strategies. You're going to read them by yourself. You're going to read them together. And you're going to hand that off to your AD carries, to your supports, to your mid laners, to your top laners, and figure out what you think the best things are going to be. And then when you get the next day, you can practice those things and tell me what you need them for. And like that kind of stuff, having something dedicated that they can do outside of the game every single day as an option. It requires some planning on your part. But the nice thing is, once you've done it for a few weeks, you start to develop a list. That list is, 10 or 15 things that your students have come up with that they can do outside of the game. And on any given day, you go and do them. Example, last year, we had the power go out in our building. Just gone. And so we were like, what is an esports team going to do with no power? So we went outside and played ultimate frisbee for 2 hours. Like, these are not the most athletic kids in the world, but they had to learn to communicate in a different way. They had to learn to talk to each other. They had to figure out what the skills of each player were, which was very important. And they had to learn it quickly in order to be successful. And some of them had never played before. Some of them had played many times in gym class. And so like the students who were like, your diamonds in game, maybe your bronzes on that field. And it gave some of the players who were not always the best in their role suddenly had a chance to shine. And having those little things preset, listed out can be a game changer for you.
Awesome. So we're pretty much at time. I know we didn't go into like the networking session, but I thought this was a better use of our time. Thank you so much, Cameron. I learned a ton. I'm not sure I'll remember it all, but no worries. This is going to be on demand, usually by 24 hours. So you can come back to this link. I will also have the recording sent out via email over the next couple of days with our presentation with all the links that we said. If I did see one person, I want to answer this question: how can I sign up to be in a match? You have to create a PlayVS account, get approved and verified through your school and through PlayVS. So make sure you do that, and then you can enroll for a match. So if you're having problems with that, or if you're having any match or sign up issues, you can reach out to support@playvs.com. If you get my email, I usually do questions and answers about like events and things like that coming up, not usually about the actual match day. So I recommend getting to know support@playvs.com. Very well. Any last thoughts before we jump off, Cameron?
I was just going to say that I have also posted my contact information. If you do contact me, I love to hear from coaches. I love to work with them. I'm working on creating a coaching YouTube channel for myself because I personally feel this is one of the things that is amazing to have available. That is not something that I had when I started. And so having anybody who could offer any advice would have been greatly appreciated. And I hope that you guys have things that you want to learn and continue to do that. If you do contact me, please say who you are, because otherwise, like, I get like around 400 emails a day, and I am quick to be like, nope, that stuff's not important. Let's put it to the side. Just be like, hey, this is from PlayVS. I'd like to know about this, and you'll get my response, I promise.
Yay. Thank you so much for doing that. So thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great evening.
Bye, guys.